Let's take you back to November 2012. Xi Jinping, the son of one-time Deputy Prime Minister Xi Jinping, took the reins of both the Communist Party and the military in China. He was named the General Secretary of the ruling Chinese Communist Party and also became the chairman of the Central Military Commission. On the 14th of March in 2013, Xi was elected as the president in a confirmation vote by the 12th National People's Congress in Beijing. Days after, in his first address to the nation as head of state, he put forth the Chinese dream. The Chinese dream, these three words were used and marketed heavily by Xi Jinping in the next 10 years. From circumventing economic policies to controlling the media and a crackdown on big tech, Xi tightened his grip on power. In every field, using decidedly authoritarian methods, he pursued an anti-corruption campaign. So far, 4.7 million officials have been investigated. In 2016, he formally established himself as the core, or the paramount leader of the party. 2 years later, China approved the removal of the two-term limit on the presidency. This effectively allows Xi Jinping to remain in power for life. He also defied the tradition of presenting a potential successor.
China, which started a term limit in its constitution in 1982, went back to delete its term limit in 2018. That's a sign of Xi Jinping's going back to Mao's era.
And finally, in 2021, his party pledged to uphold the two establishes. Party speak for loyalty to him. It was a historical resolution. In the past decade, Xi Jinping has consolidated his personal power. But what about steering China in the right direction? Has the country lost more than it has gained?
The Chinese dream aims at making China great again. But in the past 10 years, China's international image has significantly deteriorated.
I think a dream remains a dream. Today, in 2022, Xi Jinping and China are facing a number of headwinds, a number of difficulties, which may make the achievement of the whole dream, the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, a very distant objective or dream.
From COVID mismanagement to human rights violations, and aggressive foreign policies. Let's look at Xi Jinping's top 10 missteps in the last 10 years. With Xi Jinping firmly at helm, Chinese diplomacy has changed.
再次正告美方，
中方表示强烈不满。
答灾区后，那么我们愿意。
It is coercive, confrontational, and combative. There is even a term for this aggressive style of diplomacy. It's called wolf warrior diplomacy. The term is inspired by the Chinese action film Wolf Warrior.
Xi Jinping has abandoned Deng Xiaoping's policy of low-profile diplomacy toward all the other countries. Therefore, he has made China much more isolated than ever before. So this is, kind of a wolf warrior diplomacy has irritated everybody, making no friends whatsoever.
In the last decade, Chinese diplomats have aimed jarring insults and threats at various countries and territories, including India, Australia, and the United States. Is China's wolf warrior diplomacy making more enemies than friends?
China's wolf warrior diplomacy, as has been called, has actually antagonized a lot of people. And if you look at opinion polls, particularly in the West, those opinion polls are projecting a very negative image of China.
COVID origin. Will the world ever solve the mystery? At least 6.3 million deaths have been counted worldwide since the coronavirus was first detected in China more than 2 years ago. Yet the mystery of how the pandemic started has not been solved. Was it caused by a laboratory leak, accidentally or otherwise? Remember Dr. Li Wenliang, the whistleblower who tried to warn the world about coronavirus. He was summoned by the police for making false comments about the outbreak. Dr. Li died due to coronavirus complications in February 2020. Did Xi Jinping's officials try to muzzle the truth?
China covered up the emergence and the extent of the coronavirus that came out of Wuhan before Chinese New Year in 2020. It could have locked down and it didn't for political and economic reasons, and the world became sick. The Chinese government lies for its own protection.
And now, as the COVID-19 pandemic enters its third year, China is still caught in a so-called zero-COVID trap. While other countries that suffered far worse outbreaks return to a sense of normalcy. In China, tens of millions of people have again been confined to their homes in lockdowns across 60 towns and cities. The rest of the world is relying on vaccines and herd immunity. But just a handful of cases can spark a city-wide lockdown in China. Why is China stepping up anti-COVID measures?
I think at the beginning, the fight against COVID was pretty successful. China was ahead of many countries to resume its economic activities in the summer of 2020. But since the Omicron wave hit China, as the rest of the world, China has been a lockdown and it has damaged China's economy. So, and now, with this dynamic, so-called dynamic zero COVID policy, it's very hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know when China will resume normal life, and that's a big issue.
experts believe China's zero-COVID policy is self-defeating. It has come at a great economic cost. Youth unemployment is nearly 20%. Exports are dropping. According to the International Monetary Fund, strict COVID restrictions are likely to shave a full point off China's 2022 growth target. Under Xi Jinping, China has been accused of genocide and crimes against humanity. China is home to about 12 million Uighurs, mostly Muslim, living in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. In 2018, the United Nations revealed that at least 1 million Uighurs and other ethnic minorities have been detained in concentration camps. The numbers are believed to be far more. Reports of torture and sexual abuse have also emerged from these camps. China has also been accused of pressuring hundreds of thousands of Uyghur Muslims to pick cotton in the province of Xinjiang. Meet Sairagul Sayutbai, a Chinese citizen of Kazakh ethnicity, who spent 4 months in 2018 in one such camp. This former kindergarten teacher is now a refugee in Sweden.
A typical day in the camps starts in the morning after breakfast with 2 hours of Chinese lessons and 2 hours of physical exercises. This is followed by an hour of singing to the glory of Xi Jinping, which is done while holding up sheets of paper with propaganda phrases written on them. These are repeated over and over.
However, as expected, China continues to deny these allegations and claims the camps are used for re-education as vocational training centers that help combat religious extremism. But Sairagul tells a different story. Interestingly, amid international condemnation of its treatment of its Uyghur minority, China selected Uyghur athlete Dilnigar Ilhamjan for the honor of lighting the 2022 Olympic flame. Uyghur rights activists dismissed the selection as a PR exercise by China to deflect criticism.
I even received
The Belt and Road Initiative, the global infrastructure development project, is considered a centerpiece in Xi Jinping's foreign policy. The project was launched by the Chinese leader in 2013. It is inspired by the concept of the Silk Road established during the Han Dynasty 2,000 years ago. The ancient network of trade routes connected China to the Mediterranean via Eurasia for centuries. The modern route under BRI seeks to connect Asia with Africa and Europe via land and maritime networks. It's been 9 years since the inception of the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure scheme. Where is it heading?
I think the heydays of the BRI are over. I don't think that the BRI as such will be questioned. I think it will be enshrined in the party constitution, in Xi Jinping's report as a major success. But at the same time, it has already been scaled down up to a point since 2018. And the amount of money involved in the BRI will continue to drop for a number of reasons. One is that China has less money to invest in the BRI, to loan, to lend to developing countries. But at the same time, you have the growing debt issue, which has become an irritant.
The ambitious plan has also led to concerns about debt trap diplomacy. China is loaning millions of dollars to countries willing to host these projects. But is it a win-win for everyone, or is it a plan to trap poor and needy nations?
As long as he is in power, I think he would carry on this kind of policy, even though these kind of policies have outlasted their purposes. Because you can see a lot of evidence in terms of the Belt Road problems, especially Sri Lanka is almost bankrupt as part of this BLI initiative. However, as long as he is in power, he will continue these kind of bankrupt policies.
凡是数典忘祖、背叛祖国、分裂国家的人，从来没有好下场，必将遭到人民的唾弃和历史的审判。
This was Xi Jinping's speech from last year. The People's Republic of China may not control the Republic of China, but it claims it as part of its territory under the One China principle. But his dream of reunifying Taiwan with mainland China remains just that, a distant dream. Taiwan strongly disputes China's sovereignty claims. Many Taiwanese see their island as a separate nation. The relations between the two have been deteriorating sharply, especially after the visit of US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taipei. The historic visit defied a string of warnings and threats from China. Will Xi Jinping's attempts to intimidate Taiwan backfire? This year, several nations, including the US, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, diplomatically boycotted the 2022 Winter Olympics held in Beijing, in response to the Chinese mistreatment of the Uighur population. India too joined the boycott after a Chinese soldier who had fought during the Galwan Valley clashes with Indian troops in June 2020 was made an Olympic torchbearer. But there was one major country that stood with China during the Games: Russia. Ever since Xi Jinping became the president, the ties between the two countries have deepened. They have supported each other militarily, economically, and politically. Weeks before Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th, Putin and Xi met in Beijing. The two presidents oversaw the signing of an agreement pledging that relations between the sides would have no limits. A month later, according to some reports, Russia asked China for support in its war against Ukraine. China says this is untrue. So far, China has not criticized Russia's invasion of Ukraine and abstained from a United Nations vote calling on Russia to immediately withdraw its troops. It has also accused NATO and the West of provoking Moscow. What repercussions can we expect from Beijing's implicit support of Russia?
In early February 2022, when Xi Jinping had very close relations with Russian President Putin, they signed joint declaration to declare their no-limit relationship, and there is no forbidden zone for their collaboration. And 20 days later, Putin invaded Ukraine. So in that sense, Xi Jinping became a liability of Putin's action in Ukraine. Therefore, many leaders decide to stay away from Beijing.
कमजोर शांति की पहल नहीं कर सकता। वीर
India sent a clear message to China weeks after the Galwan clashes. 15th of June 2020. A savage brawl broke out between Indian and Chinese forces. Troops clashed on ridges at nearly 14,000 feet. The fighting resulted in the deaths of 20 Indian soldiers. 43 Chinese soldiers were also reportedly killed. It was the deadliest clash in 45 years. It led to a months-long military standoff and at least 11 rounds of military talks. China and India share a disputed 3,488-kilometer boundary, the third longest among China's land boundaries with 14 countries. Over the years, China has been building infrastructure to facilitate quick military mobilization in disputed areas. It has built roads, living units, and entire villages at various parts of the line of actual control. India is also building road infrastructure on its side. However, a road to a high-altitude Indian forward airbase is said to have been one of the main triggers for the clash. It plunged India-China relations to their lowest in decades. Over the last 10 years, the conflict in the South China Sea has been constantly in the spotlight. From building sizable artificial islands in 2013 to installing military facilities, China's activities in the vast maritime region are problematic. Six other governments claim all or part of the strategically vital waterway through which an estimated $5 trillion in global trade travels each year. China claims by far the largest portion of the territory, an area defined by the 9-dash line, which encompasses approximately 90% of the 3 million square kilometers South China Sea. An international tribunal in The Hague declared the claim to have no legal basis. In April 2020, the Australian government led the international call for an independent inquiry into the origins of COVID-19 in Wuhan. This irked Xi Jinping, and the PRC retaliated by cutting imports of 10 Australian products. Australia has described China's sanctions on its agriculture and energy commodities as economic coercion. And then there is the ongoing 4-year trade war between the United States and China. According to a report, it has resulted in a loss of $550 billion in import tariffs, the majority of which are aimed at Beijing. The world's second-largest economy is also facing a crisis in its once booming property sector. The crisis has been gaining momentum since Evergrande, one of the country's largest property developers, failed to make bond payments last year. How will Beijing confront its most momentous economic challenge?
There is a growing resentment within the society, and the middle class, urban middle class of China, which have already, disbursed a lot of money to buy their flat, but the flat has not been built. So I think there is a lot of pressure on the government to convince the housing sector and the developers to finish the most urgent housing projects.
The 69-year-old leader is widely expected to extend his decade-long leadership for another 5 years or beyond. He has repeatedly said that autocracy can be a new option for other countries who want to speed up their development. But at what cost? Critics say his third term will threaten human rights, ignite an indefinite diplomacy firestorm, and destabilize peace.